Welcome to the One Person Business Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Carly Reese.
And I'm Joe Rando.
And listeners, I'm really sorry for what you might hear in a second. Joe thinks I'm about to go into an introduction of our fabulous guest today, Lauren Lefkowitz. But in reality, today is a very special day in Joe Rando's world. So Lauren, if you do not mind, there's a song that I think both of us know, that I think everybody listening knows, that we're going to start off the podcast with. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Oh my.
Happy birthday, dear Joe. Happy birthday to you.
Oh no. You're going to get it, Carly.
I will leave it to our editor's discretion if he wants to keep that or not, if he thinks the sound of that will have everybody drop off instantly. But if it's entertaining, we'll keep it. But otherwise, we'll leave it to his discretion. But Joe, we are kicking off the show today. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Lauren, we are so happy you are here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I didn't even warn you. Joe, when you hopped off before
you told me there might be some curveballs. You did not say I would be required to sing, but I was happy to do it. I told you could throw anything at me.
Good. Luckily, there are lyrics that I figured you would know, so I thought we could just jump into it. And speaking of jumping into it, let's talk about you, Lauren Lefkowitz. We are so happy you are here. Lauren is an executive coach, partnering with executives who've gotten to the middle of their careers and think, this is it? It's fine, I guess. She works with humans who are ready to find joy, excitement, challenge, and balance in their careers and have a personal life to love. You are right in line with our values here at Lifestar, Lauren. Lauren was an 80-hour-a-week executive, is a recovering people pleaser. I am working on that myself, and has lived with chronic illness for more than 15 years. And once she broke both of her shoulders chasing a vacuum. So look, we should maybe get into that at some point during the podcast, because that sounds like a great story. Despite these challenges, she decided to take action in her life, learn to set boundaries, create opportunities for personal choice, and find her version of success and joy, which included becoming a certified laughter yoga leader, which, again, I want to revisit that.
I've done that. I've done laughter yoga.
Have you really?
Yeah, Leisha knew a woman that was a certified instructor, and she had us come to an event once. It was a riot. I mean, it was like, I mean, it's not just that, it's a workout.
Well, Lauren,
really
if you ever do virtual classes, send me your sign up and I will do that, because I'm a big yogi, but I've never done laughter yoga.
I sure will.
Perfect. Well, if you guys aren't listeners, if you're not comfortable enough as is, Lauren makes it comfortable to get uncomfortable, create powerful goals, and create real sustainable career and life transformations. So, Lauren, welcome again to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
We wanted to ask you, we had the privilege of listening in on one of your presentations about a month ago now, where you talked about fine as a trap. What is fine as a trap, and why does this happen, especially with solopreneurs?
Yeah. Fine as a trap came up when I was creating my company and really trying to figure out what the problem is, right? And so if we have a big problem, right? If you walk into a job and you're a vice president or the CEO and you walk in and people start hitting you, you're going to leave. That's terrible and toxic and dangerous and shocking, and you are going to run out the door. That's not the way that fine happens. Fine happens when something isn't great. It starts off great. It starts off exciting. You've got the title, you've got the job, you've got the money, you've got the company, you've got the great coworkers, you've got the job, you've got the title, you've got the great product or service that you're working with, you've got the coworkers, everything you dreamed of. And yet you're not happy because you're working a lot of hours, or it's not as much money as you thought it would be, or the team you have isn't as great, or your boss or the board has some level of toxicity. And you say to yourself, it's fine because they're paying me a lot of money, or it's fine because I finally got the CEO title or the VP title, or I switched departments, or industries, which I never thought I could do. So it's fine that I work all of these hours. It's fine that I'm missing my kids' games or recitals. It's fine. And it's not fine. It's just not bad enough yet that you're willing to do anything about it. And the more things become fine, the more things become fine. And the more we settle into this life that's actually really not okay, but we've taken all of these little steps towards fine, and so now we live there.
When you talk about this, it reminds me of that story about if you throw a frog in boiling water, it'll jump right out, but if you put it in there and heat the water slowly, the frog cooks. Is that kind of where you're coming down with this, that it's really a function of just slowly?
I literally posted about that the other day, that story. If you throw a frog in a boiling pot of water, that's the equivalent of you walk into a new job and it is terrible. Or they offer you a job and they say, but it's half the salary you wanted, but you're going to love the place. You know right away, the water is boiling. You know to jump away. We know how to have a gut response to something. But yes, if you put the frog in tepid water, you make the offer that's like pretty good. Or you're in a work environment that has been great, but is slow declining. The water is slowly heating up. By the time it boils, you are a dead frog because you have tolerated and tolerated and tolerated until it's intolerable, but you don't have or feel like you have the power to do anything else.
I know, I feel like so far too many people have experienced that. Well, so I want to jump from a frog to a monster discussion, if that works for everybody.
Yes.
You have a monster analogy. Can you talk about it and what those common monsters are that you see in solopreneurs?
Yeah. So, one of the ways that we look at ourselves is what is wrong with us. Nobody ever asks, tell me what's going on. And you start by saying, well, I'm amazing. I'm really talented. I'm funny. I'm a lot of fun to be around. I have a ton of skills. I have a great book of experience behind me. So now I'm going out to be a solopreneur and all I can feel in front of me is confidence. Nobody says that.
That'd be wonderful.
It would be wonderful. Yeah. And it can be, right? All of those things I said, I believe about me and I didn't used to. And I believe about both of you. And I would have wondered how you were both so brave to be solopreneurs, to be entrepreneurs, and thought, oh, that couldn't be for me. It's a learning process. What happens instead is we think about doing something, or we are standing in place doing something, and our inner voices get the best of us. Some people refer to them as saboteurs or survival mechanisms. I call them monsters. They are the monsters who live in our heads, who tell us what's wrong with us, who tell us what we can't do, who tell us the ways that we are likely to fail, and who tell us we're just not good enough. And so some of the really common monsters that live inside of us are the perfectionist, who will not do anything unless it's going to be perfect. And I think you'll both agree that there is nothing perfect about being a solopreneur. It is messy. The people pleaser, who has spent their careers serving other people. And now as a solopreneur, you are called on to support and serve yourself. We are not used to that. We are not used to putting ourselves first. The truth is, if we do put ourselves first, we're actually going to serve other people better. But we're not trained to do that. We're trained to serve others. And the third one that's really common is the good enough monster. The monster who makes us think that everybody else is smarter, more talented, and more successful than we are, or than we even can be. And that, I think, is what prevents a lot of us from becoming solopreneurs and what prevents a lot of us from being successful as solopreneurs and not going back into the corporate world or the healthcare world or whatever world we've been in prior to being solopreneurs. Because perfectionism and pleasing certainly hold us back, but the not good enough monster who tells us that everybody else is better than us gets really loud and makes us think We can't be as great as we need to be.
So how do you get rid of these monsters? It's funny because I have a 4-year-old, so we have this discussion from a 4-year-old level, but how do us as adults, as solopreneurs, get rid of them?
Can I ask a quick question before we dig into the solution? Because I heard two things there, and I want to make sure I'm hearing it right. So there's the trap of being fine, the trap of saying, okay, this is fine. I'm okay with this, even though it really isn't fine. And then there's the monsters. And if I understand it, the monsters are kind of what's keeping us willing to be trapped. Is that fair?
Yeah, great clarifying question. So if you think about the monsters, they are derived from our primitive response system. Being chased by lions or walking towards a fire and getting burned. We are trained from a neurological, physiological perspective to protect ourselves. The evolution of that is that we are trained to stay in safe places so that we don't even run into the lion. We don't even see the fire. We have this false sense of safety receiving a paycheck from a company, which isn't really safety because layoffs and job eliminations happen all the time. We have this sense of safety of not pushing too far one way or the other, not pushing our manager to promote us, not pushing for a raise because we don't want to get in trouble, we don't want to get fired. And so we stay in this safety zone, which is the fine zone. And we remain trapped in this place where everything is fine because we are not being actively attacked. And so these monsters are designed actually to protect us, not to make us feel bad. They do, that's the result, they make us feel bad. But they're designed to protect us so that we stay safe. And in staying in this false sense of safety and control, we don't get to really enjoy this full range of emotions and success and joy.
So keeping us safe, but not necessarily keeping us happy.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my next question, which is solopreneurs, we have found, mostly become solopreneurs not because they want to be rich, but because they want to live life on their own terms in some way. There's something they want out of life, from not having a boss to getting to do the kind of work they want to do, to being able to go to their kids' games, to be able to, work from anywhere. It's a whole range of reasons for doing it. And so I guess my question is, since you work with lots of different kinds of people, are solopreneurs in general better off in this dimension of this fine, or worse off than, say, people that have more corporate jobs?
I don't think that it's a better or worse scenario. I think that wherever you are, if you stay in the corporate life, if you go to the solopreneur life, if you go back and forth, if you aren't building resources and community and support, you will be somewhere between fine and not okay wherever you go, right? So to your point, Joe, about solopreneurs wanting a life that has more freedom or no boss or doing the thing you want to do or whatever it is, or money or both or all, right? We get to choose how we want things to be. If you're not building the support systems that you need, if you're not doing the inner work to tackle those monsters and to help manage them and to find out who you are when you are talking about how talented and smart and funny and fun you are, then you won't succeed in either place, right? In the world where you have a boss or in the world where you're your own boss, because your bosses will be your monsters.
All right, so let's get rid of them. Or is that the right thing to do?
Yeah. Good luck, and let me know if you figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
We are whole people, right? We are whole people with different aspects of ourselves that come up in different parts of our lives and at different times. So with my clients and with my work, the goal is not let's eliminate your monsters, because they live and breathe. They're part of us. And when they actually do need to keep us safe, they do. If I were filing my taxes and my inner perfectionist went to sleep and I was like, I'll just file whatever and hope for the best, the IRS is not going to love that. So we need our monsters to function to some level. Not as much the not good enough monster, right? But the not good enough monster can help us figure out what kind of support we need in the areas where we feel like we are not good enough, so that we can move forward, so that we don't make big, huge mistakes, so that we don't hold ourselves back. So it's less about getting rid of the monsters. It's more about discovering who our higher selves are, who we are when we're willing to say what's great about us, which is a hard thing to learn, and shifting the volume, right? Being louder about how amazing you are, and quieting the monsters when they need to be quiet. Listening to yourself when you're going to do something new and you're in that discomfort zone and you're stretching from what you know and what you've already done, so that you can choose. So that when your monster says, do not release this new online course you've created because it's not perfect, that then your higher self gets to choose. Do I want to listen to this? Does it need to be perfected? Does it need to be made better? Or can I release this as the first edition, learn from it, and come back and revise, right? Do I just get the thing out there, the product, the service, the offer, or do I wait until I think it's absolutely perfect? Who gets to talk? Is it my higher self or is it my monsters? So it's really about gaining choice between which parts of yourselves get to give input.
I just wanted to kind of dig in a little bit. There's something that I have observed, and it was in myself when I was younger, and I've seen it in a lot of other people, and it ties back to the not good enough monster. And I think a lot of people, whether they're solopreneurs or wherever they are in life, look and say, I'm good at this and this and this, but I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. And they say, well, I better get good at the things I'm not good at if I want to be successful. And it's what I've learned over many years and making the mistake is that you're way better off focusing on what you're good at and building up those skills and becoming really great and finding ways to offset the weaknesses. You know, I never should be an accountant, right? And I learned early on, hire an accounting firm. You know, don't try to get good at it. I could have done it, but it would have taken me so much time. And I'm using my skills, the things I'm better at, to focus on using my time for that. And is that something you come across a lot with people? Are they worried about is that not good enough monster kind of saying, hey, let me put all this time into kind of filling in my weaknesses?
I think that's such a great point for the solopreneur, because the word solo leads us to think we have to do everything on our own. There are things that I will never be good at and that I don't want to get good at. Accounting is a great example. The first thing I did when I decided I was going to go out on my own and that I was going to have more complicated taxes and bookkeeping was to hire an accountant. It was an expense I was willing to front load while I was bootstrapping my own growth because I knew I wasn't good at it. I knew I could do it, but there's that time value equation, right? If I'm spending X amount of time making X amount of hundreds of dollars per hour, and I have to spend triple the time or quadruple the time doing my accounting work, I am losing money. That's like, I don't know a lot about math, but I get that. And so there were other things that I did because I was interested enough and skilled enough to do a pretty good job. And that was me letting go of my perfection monster, who is very strong and very loud. And I built my own website, for example. And it's decent. It's not like amazing for SEO purposes, but I didn't need it to be yet. I've since hired a tech VA to do some extra work on the website so that my podcast comes through. This podcast will be embedded in there. And I'm going to build a media page soon with that VA. So I've outsourced little bits and pieces here and there. And what I think about is, how much is this going to cost me in both scenarios? If I hire someone for it, or if I don't hire someone for it, what is the cost? What is the benefit? I don't want to be good at everything. And eventually, I only want to be good at executive coaching. I will want a marketing team. I will want a business manager. I will want all of that. I don't have the capacity or the money for that yet, but I'm only 2 years out of my corporate career. So I'm at a reasonable place for myself, and I get to pick and choose what pieces I hand off.
Awesome.
Yeah, great point. I think it's funny, as we've been talking about this, I have a self-deprecating monster. And it's funny because you say the monsters are like the tool, like they are your defense mechanism, or like, I'm trying to say. And I feel like I'm very self-deprecating with my weaknesses. So as you're saying that, I'm like, gosh, that's something that, like, that's a monster of mine. And I didn't realize that was a monster. But I know that I can use that to my advantage in some cases. So how can people make their higher self louder and quiet their monsters a little more? And how can you use your monsters to your advantage?
Great question. I'll start with your monsters. Your monsters can be used to your advantage to sort. So when you're talking yourself out of something, choose a monster. And I gave you examples of 3 that I see in a lot of people, but I have like 40, right? I have a they're out to get you monster who's suspicious of everybody. I also have a Pollyanna monster who thinks everybody is all good, and they argue with each other. Right? So we have a plethora of monsters. There's no shortage. So one thing is, I do an exercise with my clients where we identify their higher selves and we identify their monsters. And then we can sort of bring those into conversations when people are saying, I can't, right? So for identifying your monsters and for noticing them, notice when you say, but. Notice when you say, because. Notice when you give yourself an excuse or a reason why not. Those are your monsters. Now, if they are protecting you, then thanks, monsters, right? And a great way to look at those monsters is in your own risk tolerance. So if you're not a risky person and somebody says, I have an amazing business opportunity for you, you only have to spend $40,000, your monsters are going to say, no, don't do that. And then your monsters will give you some time to evaluate whether you should do that or not, even if your gut reaction is excitement. And they can help you decide with your higher self, do I want to do that? Do I want to invest in that? Does that risk level match my temperament and my tolerance? To identify your higher self, ask other people what they think about you. Because we are not good at complimenting ourselves. We are not good at looking at who we are and how we are. We are much better at looking at what's wrong with us. We are much better looking at the I can't becauses. So when you ask other people, when you think of me, what do you think of? And collect that data and see what comes up. What are the themes? What do different people say about you that is the same? And I do this kind of exercise like really in depth with my clients. And what ends up happening is that you learn about who you are. So some of my higher self qualities are that I'm a catalyst. I have been called I've been told by people that being with me is like sitting by a warm fire, which is the greatest compliment. And I look out for it. I look out for times when I'm working with clients or talking to friends or family, and I see that in myself, and I try to remember that because it's so much easier to remember the monsters. So if you have these sides of yourself talking to each other, and you're really noticing both sides and not just noticing the monsters, you're giving yourself the opportunity to see the greatness in you that other people already see.
Lauren, it's so funny that the way you described people because, or the way people described you, because I watched your presentation. I have followed your LinkedIn. We've emailed back and forth a little bit. And literally the word that just kept coming into my mind was, gosh, she's so warm. She's just so warm. So I was like, oh, nailed it. Because the people that really know her said the same thing.
Thank you. And you know what? A few years ago, if you had asked me, I would have not been able to own that. So some of the work that you can do, some of that inner work, which is valuable to do with a coach or a business coach or a company that helps you run your one-person business the way that you do at Lifestar, is that you're not on your own. You know, one of my challenges was I'd been executive coaching for 15 years before I realized I needed my own coach. It did not occur to me that as a high achieving, people pleasing, super successful person, that anybody could be more clever about me than me. That if I couldn't figure it out for myself, it probably wasn't figure outable. So I lived this like almost martyr life where I was like, I'll help other people achieve their dreams, but that's not for me. And I think a lot of us do that, especially a lot of high achievers, especially people who want to be solopreneurs but are holding themselves back and keeping a long-term side gig because they aren't hitting that mark that they're trying to hit, because we think we have to do it by ourselves. We think if we're smart enough to be supporting other people, to be leadership for other people, we shouldn't need help and support. So for me, through getting help and support, through having my own coach, through having my own business coach, through looking out for resources and community and other people who were building, which is how I came across this community, was, just instrumental in giving me the confidence to stand up and tell you who I am and to take credit for who I am and to reach out for more support and really receive that support and not just sort of superficially tell people I receive support, but actually really receiving and internalizing that. And I think that's what so many of us don't realize, is that there is so much opportunity for support and community and help, and then passing that on and paying it on forward and building this chain of people who just help and support each other.
Yeah. Lauren, I feel like this podcast is so inspiring, and just I hope listeners feel the same way. But you've given us so much wisdom. Let's tie it all back together. Knowing the monsters, knowing how we started with what is fine is a trap. So with everything you've given, how do people avoid fine is a trap?
The first thing is to pay attention, to notice. We do so much doing in our lives. And all of the things we talked about today are the being side of us, right? Are we being our monsters, or are we being our higher selves? Are we being stuck in this trap of fine, or are we willing to look out for what else might be out there? So before you even start looking, before you even start deciding, notice what is fine, what's great. When you end your day, I have a client who does roses and thorns at the end of her day with her spouse. And what was the best part of your day and the worst part of your day? Recognize that. What are the themes that come up? What was the best part of your day? Was there a best part of your day? Or was it just like, okay? And does that go on and on? We're going to have days where we don't feel amazing. But if all of your days aren't amazing, something's wrong. So notice what's wrong. Then decide, what do you not want anymore? What does not work for you? Once you clear out that set of cobwebs, what do you want? Write yourself a list of what you want. And every time you write the word but, cross out the second half of that sentence. Stop limiting yourself in just your ideas and thoughts. And then go find the support. And it's going to be different for everybody. Some people thrive with a coach. Some people thrive with communities. Some people thrive with an entire business that helps them run their business. And everything in between. There are hundreds of ways to run your business as a solopreneur. But the thing you have to recognize is that you don't have to be alone in it. You have to notice where you get stuck, where you hold yourself back, where your monsters get too loud. And those are the parts of you that need support.
I love all of this. Everything you say. Oh, Joe, sorry. You look like you were going to say something.
No, just, I love the fact that, we're all kind of coming to the same place of, just because you're a solopreneur, don't think you have to be alone, because it's one of the things that people really don't like about being solopreneurs is being alone. And yet it's a mistake. It's a mistake to be alone. Stacy has that sign up behind her sometimes in some of the events. It says solo together.
It is. Yep. Well, Lauren, you have given us so many, I feel like, quotable moments in this show. So I have to ask you, what is your favorite quote about success?
I have a lot of favorite quotes about success, but I think my very favorite is, and it was, I think, originally it was attributed to Ford from the Ford Motor Company, but there's controversy about who said it first. And the quote is, "Wherever you go, there you are." Wherever we go, we bring us with us. I went from a 60-hour-a-week job, brought me with me without doing any inner work, to the next job and got myself to 80 hours, sometimes up to 100 hours, because I didn't do the work. I broke my shoulders chasing a vacuum.
Okay, story time. Now is the you teed it up. You have to say it now.
Yes. And I will tell you, before I tell you that story, I learned 0 lessons from it because I didn't do the work. So I was building my perfect life. I was working 80 plus hours a week. And in my head, I was building my perfect life. And in order to build my perfect life, I had to make my home perfect. So I cleaned everything out, got rid of a whole bunch of stuff, donated, threw away, organized my underwear by color. Everything was perfect. I was working from home on a snowy day, and I was running my Roomba vacuum to do the last perfect run of dust cleanup. And I saw the vacuum going for an unplugged glass lamps cord. It was the last thing I needed to donate. And I jumped up from my laptop and ran across the room to catch it before it caught the lamp, slid in my socks on my wood floor, reached out my arms to try to reach a table I wasn't close enough to, fell flat on my front, and broke both of my shoulders over my head.
Oh my gosh.
It was a literal sign from the universe, because my known persona was that I was a hand raiser. I was a chronic hand raiser. Anytime anybody said I need help with this, I will help. I nicknamed myself the vice president of whatever you need. And I would help with anything. And the first joke from all different friends and colleagues from all different walks of my life, the first thing they said was, "Look who can't be a hand raiser anymore." So during my recovery, which the full recovery was about a year, but the time off of work was about 4 months. And during my recovery, I said to myself, I will not go back to work the same way. I will work 40 hours a week. I will set boundaries. I will stay in my lane. I'm done with this hand raising. But I did no work. And another favorite quote of mine is, "A goal without a plan is simply a wish." So I went right back to it. I went right back to 80 plus hours a week. When I hit my breaking point, it was the beginning of the pandemic. I was the vice president of HR. I was overseeing operations. I was overseeing meeting and conference planning. I was interim managing finance. I was managing a renovation of our office that was $1 million renovation. And I was tired. And that was when I hired my own coach, was when I hit that point where I just couldn't see how to change anything. I couldn't do the work myself. And here I was coaching other people on how to do the work and really helping people change their lives. And I couldn't see a way out. And I finally realized that I could be helped if I was willing to be.
Wow.
I know, I'm speechless. That was so inspiring. And Lauren, I mean, you are an executive coach. For people listening, where can people find you if they are looking for help in your realm?
Thank you for asking. There are 3 places where you can find me very easily. One is LinkedIn. I'm super active there. I'm on there every day. One is at fineasatrap.com, where you can get your own inventory of how fine your professional life is right now. And the third is my podcast, which is I Could Talk to You All Day, which I do with another executive coach. And it is a podcast for leaders who are also humans, which I think is most of us. And we get really vulnerable about our own experiences as executives, our own experiences of being entrepreneurs, and we make it funny. So
cool.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I cannot wait
And we'll
to
put
listen.
those in the show notes, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll get those
Thank
in the
you.
show notes. So
Well, Lauren, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And for listeners, like we keep saying, you are not alone in this. We are solo together. And so if you want proof of that, visit lifestartwith2rs.com. We have resources for you. We have a great community, blogs. We have an app getting released in hopefully a few months or so. So you are not in this alone. lifestartwith2rs.com. Be sure to check it out. Be sure to check out everything Lauren just mentioned to reach out to her, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening.